Hi, this is and I'm going to get our webinar started. So yeah, Mohan, we can see your screen. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you guys for joining us today for our HITRUST Compliance A to Z webinar. We're excited to take an in-depth look at HITRUST compliance, addressing from what it is to how to achieve compliance. Sorry about that snafu at the beginning of some technical difficulties, but we're excited that you guys could all join us. So just to tell you a little bit about RSI security, if you'll advance to the next slide, Mohan. So we're headquartered in San Diego, California. We also have a sales office in Portland and LA. We are both an MSSP, so a managed security service provider, as well as compliance advisory service provider. So we help companies get compliant with a variety of frameworks. We are HITRUST certified professionals, PCI, QSA, and ASB. And as I mentioned, we're also experts at guiding HITRUST in HIPAA and privacy compliance. So let me tell you a little bit about today's speaker, Mohan. So Mohan Shamachar is our senior security advisor and assessor at RSI Security. He has 15 years of experience in information technology, infrastructure, management, and cybersecurity. He's worked in the banking, healthcare, and energy sectors. Mohan is both an authorized HITRUST CSF assessor and a PCI DSS qualified security assessor, QSA. So he's very authorized to be doing assessments for HITRUST, PCI, and a myriad of other compliance frameworks. Mohan's recent accomplishments include successful completion of NERC SIP program management, numerous level 1 PCI and HIPAA assessments and audits. All of which is to say that he is an expert in HITRUST and will have a lot to offer in today's presentation. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to you, Mohan.
Thank you, Ariana. Hello, everybody. Just want to take a minute. Hope everybody is okay, all is well during this pandemic circumstances. And I'd like to, in advance, wish that you and your family will be safe and healthy in the coming days and months. With that, thank you for joining me and Ariana and RSI for this webinar. So a quick agenda. We will run through what the background behind HITRUST and why is HITRUST different from others? Why HITRUST? And then what is HITRUST Cybersecurity Framework? And how is a HITRUST cybersecurity framework assessment performed? And what does the process look like? And what are the timelines look like? And at the end, we will conclude the webinar with a bunch of questions and answer any of your questions. So please feel free to pose your questions in the question answer window.
Yeah, sorry, Mohan, I just want to hop in really quick there. So part of the Zoom webinar is there's a Q&A box at the bottom. So please, at any time during the presentation, if you have any questions, please submit them there so that Mohan can have those ready to go at the end of the presentation. All right. Sorry, Mohan.
No problem. So quickly about HITRUST, founded in 2007, HITRUST Alliance is the governing body of maintaining the cybersecurity framework. It's now in the 9.2 major release, released in 2019. And it's guided by the advisory council of all the major healthcare organizations, and also supported by the healthcare HHS. And the basic foundation of the HITRUST CSF is the NIST cybersecurity framework. Probably many of you are very familiar with NIST 853 and the risk management framework and so on. So NIST is a great cybersecurity framework platform. And then, so this NIST adoption into HITRUST is supported by HHS. And also HITRUST is deemed an acceptable controls by the CPA organization for SOC 2 audits, and then identified as appropriate standard to safeguard Internet of Things by NIST. And quickly about the adoption, you may want to know, who's using this, what kind of adoption is happening with the HITRUST CSF. It's utilized by 81% of US hospitals and health systems and 83% of US health plans. It is the most widely adopted control framework in the healthcare industry, according to a 2018 survey. And lately, this is the new one since 9.2. In the past, HITRUST was all about healthcare industry and HIPAA, but HITRUST has evolved into an industry regulations agnostic platform. Now, one can perform a PCI audit on HITRUST, a GDPR privacy audit using HITRUST, and get certified. So that's the new information that you may want to know. So it's not just for HIPAA, although it started with the Healthcare Foundation. Now, why HITRUST? So yeah, there are many platforms, many frameworks, many standards, and why HITRUST? Simple, some of the key points here. As you may know, no matter which framework it is, which standard it is, which platform it is, the data security breaches have not reduced. It's increasingly happening. And then there are certain standards and frameworks that provide very prescribed way to do things. There are frameworks and standards that do not prescribe anything. So there is some kind of vagueness, and there is this inconsistency. And talking about prescriptive requirements, HIPAA gives security rule, the breach notification rule, the privacy rule, and there is the HIPAA and the HITECH that has evolved since the HIPAA started. But still, HIPAA is still a guideline. If you look at it, it's not prescriptive, leading to interpretations and inefficiencies, which means one hospital or one health plan may not, be as effectively implement the standards that HIPAA says in the same manner. So you cannot say that one hospital is very well equipped with cybersecurity versus whether another hospital is not. So there is that interpretations and inefficiencies that occur. And then, as you may be aware, you have regulators, underwriters, customers, partners pushing for a very stern and stringent requirement implementations. So if you do not have a platform that provides you a consistent implementation, then regulators may not be able to identify your security posture. So that's where HITRUST comes into picture, that providing you that validated certification. So benefits, just piggybacking on how to meet these challenges, is HITRUST is a single benchmark for organizations, increases trust and transparency, meets client needs, scaling according to type, size, and complexity, cost reduction, and effective security posture. So I'm going to answer quickly a question that has come here. Did I understand correctly that by conducting a HITRUST audit, a company can achieve PCI certification? No, that is not what it is. The HITRUST is a platform. Just because you use HITRUST does not mean you achieve PCI certification. So PCI certification, as a PCI QSA, I can tell you, yes, it has to be done by a QSA company, and a QSA company needs to audit your PCI implementation, and a QSA company needs to provide you AOC and the report on compliance that will be registered. However, what HITRUST gives is a very consistent, as you can see in the benefits here, uh, it gives you a very good benchmark and a platform that increases trust and transparency. And also you can you can tailor according to type, size, and complexity. So HITRUST has adopted or still continue to adopt PCI's requirements so that a, a, a PCI audit done using HITRUST is much more comprehensive. That's the answer I would like to give for that question. So the HITRUST approach, we kind of talked about how HITRUST is built on industry standards such as NIST and ISO. It's a comprehensive industry level overlay of NIST risk management framework structured on ISO 27001, built on 853 NIST, and integrates many other relevant sources. So it is you can say it has taken the best of all worlds in bringing this framework to you. That's what the picture on the left is trying to provide you. It is designed by data protection professionals to address risk management requirements, security requirements, and compliance needs. You will see some of the much more highly valued benefits of using HITRUST in the next few slides. This is a quick snapshot of how HITRUST framework compares to other approaches in managing the risk. I'll take a few examples here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Let's say prescriptive controls. PCI, we are talking about PCI. PCI, yes, it is very prescriptive, whereas NIST is not. It is a framework and it's a guideline. And HIPAA is also is not very prescriptive, whereas 853 goes quite a bit in terms of prescription, and ISO 27001 is partial, and HITRUST, yes, just like PCI. And practical controls, HITRUST meets PCI. But when it comes to scalable implementation, PCI is partial, whereas HITRUST, yes, it meets. And then let's see. Accurate results. That's a key point to talk about. Why HITRUST gives accurate results is just because of the way the approach and the platform and the process make sure that you don't drop a ball on any single requirement. And also these requirements are assembled based on your type, complexity, size, and risks, and so on. So it's a very, very tailored assessments that you do using HITRUST. That I would like to summarize this in one word. It's a tailored audit. No other frameworks provides a tailored audit like HITRUST. So sometimes, in other cases, you either it's applicable or not applicable, and then there is no. It's kind of binary. But whereas HITRUST takes you at multiple levels with multiple requirements depending on the complexities and risks. So continuing on how the HITRUST CSF framework approach works. Yes, you first identify your risks and define protection requirements as an organization, and then jump to the HITRUST approach where the CSF is an amalgam, is a combination of multiple frameworks or requirements or regulations, and then it builds you the bundle or the package that is suitable and tailored for you. And then in step 3, you implement those identified and manage those identified controls. And then in step 4, perform the assessment and provide reporting and certification. So this is where HITRUST CSF meets the tailored audit that you all require. So quickly on what does HITRUST Cybersecurity Framework consist of? A major, the 19 domains that are listed here. As you can see, It covers all of the cybersecurity areas. So I'm not going to read the all of the 19 here. Critically, vulnerability management, network protection, audit logging and monitoring, incident management, third-party assurance, risk management, physical and environment security. So it covers it all. So continuing to talk about the cybersecurity framework structure. So you have control categories. The information protection areas based on ISO, such as access control and privacy practices. When we talk about privacy practices, GDPR is added to HITRUST. And then we have control objectives. They are subtopical information protection areas within a control category. So for each control category, you have control objectives. They are based on ISO 27001, such as mobile computing, and when it comes to privacy, it's openness and transparency. And then you have controls, specific information protection requirements based on ISO 27001, such as mobile computing and communications, and privacy notices and privacy practices. So that's, it is distilled further. And then you have implementation levels, up to 3 general levels of detailed and prescriptive requirements within each control, supported by additional industry segments of relevant requirements specific to an entity or data type. It includes risk factors used to select used to select each of the 3 general implementation requirement levels. So, and then finally the control requirements. That's the low level, the detailed prescriptive requirements contained in information requirement level that supports control specification. As you can see, it starts with categories, addresses objectives, addresses controls, and then identifies the levels, and then identifies the control requirements. So it's not like it's the same set of control requirements for each company, for the same thing. So one company's set of control requirements may differ from another company's set of control requirements. That's where the HITRUST provides you the benefit of tailored requirements. And so talking about, we talked about the approach and the framework, how it's designed. Now let's talk about the assessment levels. So the levels of assessment is decided by the increasing levels of risk and complexity. We continue to talk about complexity, continue to talk about types. So there are 3 major factors that impacts what level of assessment is performed. So organizational, system-wide, and then the regulatory risk factors. So I'll have a few more details on all of these 3 things in the next few slides. So let's talk about these 3 different levels. Level 1, which is also called the baseline assessment. These are the minimum set of requirements for all systems and organizations, regardless of size, sophistications, or complexity. For example, if a company performs level 1 HITRUST baseline assessment, we can say that they have met the HIPAA security rule. So they have addressed all of the HIPAA security rule requirements. So that's where the baseline starts. And then in level 2, called the comprehensive assessment, these are either additional requirements to the baseline assessment or increase the strength of the baseline assessment. So as you can see, the requirements may grow in number in terms of quantity, or the requirements may remain the same but go much stronger, deeper. So that's how the comprehensive assessment level 2 is addressed. Level 3 piggybacks on level 1 and level 2 again, where it's either you add additional requirements. It could be because you're in Texas, now Texas regulatory factor is added. You may be in California, now California regulatory factors are added. So depending on what risk factors and what organizational factors are added, then the additional requirements can increase. Or again, just like how the level 2 does, it may have the same number of requirements, but again go much lower level of level 2 requirement statement, make it stronger. So let's see, I have a question here. What determines which level of assessment an organization should take? If level 1 addresses the HIPAA security rule, what is the benefit of doing level 2 or level 3? So yes, so if your organization is just addressing HIPAA security rule, then you do the level 1 and say, I have met the HIPAA security rule. I comply with HIPAA security rule. Now, let's say your organization is not just about HIPAA security rule. Now you want to add additional risk factors such as state level rules, which is not just HIPAA, but let's say GLBA or Texas or Massachusetts, or take any other state, add risk factor. So now, just by performing the base level assessment, you're not going to say you are GLBA compliant, or you're not going to say I'm compliant with Texas regulatory rule. By increasing the levels, you can provide to the regulators, to your partners, to your stakeholders, saying that I'm not just HIPAA security rule compliant, but I'm now compliant with all additional regulations that comes with it. So you don't, for example, you don't have to do another assessment just to meet another state's regulatory rule. One shot, you can accomplish multiple. That's a major advantage with HITRUST. I hope that answers your question. Now, diving deeper with the risk factors. So we talked about 3 major categories, which is organizational, system, and regulatory, that defines your level of assessment. So some examples of organizational risk factors, such as number of patients, number of hospital beds, prescriptions, number of physicians, number of PHI transactions, and then service provider data volume. So non-IT service providers, let's say like clearinghouse and so on. So how many records? What's the volume exchanged? And geographic scope. Are you in one state or multiple states? Are you offshore? And then when it comes to systems, what about, where does the PHI come in? Where does the PHI go? I will also say PHI can be replaced with sensitive data, or what you're trying to protect. What is your sensitive data? In case of healthcare industry, yes, it is PHI and ePHI. And so your internal networks, whether it is publicly accessible or not, do the third parties have access? Do you have mobile devices in question? Do you have healthcare interface exchange connection, and number of users, and daily transactions in your network? So all of these are factors that decides what requirements, what controls are applicable to you. And then finally, regulatory, what regulations are you trying to meet here? Are you trying to meet PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, FedRAMP, FISMA, all other states? So we talked about how by performing a particular level of assessment, you are going to meet regulatory requirements such as these. So this is how HITRUST picks or tailors your assessment level and the requirements so that you can satisfactorily say, I have deployed a good cybersecurity posture based on HITRUST standards. So let's go, and here's an example of how level 1, level 2, level 3 can be identified based on what we saw in the previous slide of identifying the risk level based on organizational and system and regulatory factors. So here's on the left side, you can see the risk factor, and on the right side, you will see the different levels. Let's say there is a record count less than 10 million in a hospital, then probably it's level 1. And then let's say you have the record count between 10 million and 60, level 2, greater than 60 million, level 3. So that's a simple way of categorizing how complex your organization is. On the other hand, let's say your hospital record count may be less than 10 million. However, your physician practice may be greater than 60 million, just a hypothetical example. So usually, if any of the factors require you to do level 3, all of the factors require you to do level 3. You cannot say that, when it comes to pharmacy, I am level 3. When it comes to hospitals, I'm level 1. So I will only do level 1. That's not how HITRUST works. If any of the risk factor leads you to level 3, you will do overall level 3 assessments. I hope that gives you a clear criteria on how to choose the level. Now, so we talked about the assessment levels. Now let's talk about assessment types from the HITRUST certification point of view. HITRUST has 2 types of assessments, self-assessment and validated assessment. Self-assessment is like a readiness assessment, uses the HITRUST methodology. You will get a report, but it's not validated. Validated assessment, it involves a HITRUST CSF approved assessor, including on-sites and so on, and then uses the methodology, and you get the report, and then it is noted as HITRUST CSF certified. So in the interest of time, we will come back to this, but you will learn more about it in the next couple of slides. So I'm not going to run through this list to the bottom. And as you may all know, this deck will be available to you. So quickly about process and timelines. So how does the self-assessment, the assessment looks like? What does it look like? So you perform, so this is our recommendation. This is also HITRUST's recommendation, is you perform your self-assessment or readiness assessment to prepare for the validated assessment, and select a HITRUST assessor, purchase a validated assessment from HITRUST, complete the validated assessment using My CSF tool. That is the platform, that is the portal that HITRUST provides you. It's got 90-day access. This is how you're limited, you're forced to perform the assessment within a boundary. An assessor will perform the validation and audit work and will be submitted to HITRUST for review. HITRUST performs the QA and the review. It's not just the assessor company like PCI saying, okay, you're good to go. HITRUST will create a report and letter of certification. So that is the overall overall process that looks that is used for HITRUST certification. So there's a few more details here. So how do you get certified? So what do you have to meet? So meet the minimum compliance level, score of 3+ or 3 with corrective action plan, or the CAPS, for all 75 CSF controls. The total amount of time depends on its initial readiness level and amount of remediation needed, which means when you do the first step here, performing self-assessment and readiness assessment, if you have too much of remediation required, obviously that adds to your assessment timeline. Independent assessments can take 2 to 8 weeks, depending on the size and complexity of organization and the scoped environment. A minimum of 8 weeks for the validated assessment to be processed and certification awarded by HITRUST. So overall, it can take 3 to 4 months to complete the assessment and obtain certifications once an organization is ready. So that's about the process and timelines, pretty straightforward. So here's a graphic. What type of HITRUST CSF assessment report do you need? So here's the rundown. You need a complete readiness assessment. There is a path to that. You need a HITRUST CSF or validated or HITRUST certified assessment. There's a path to that. And then whether you want to use My CSF portal for readiness assessment, in that case, you have to subscribe to My CSF portal and you have to purchase a HITRUST CSF assessment report. If you don't need the My CSF, you just need a HITRUST CSF assessment report for now, purchase the HITRUST CSF report. However, you will not get to use the My CSF. And similarly, similar path here. In general, yes, you have to subscribe to, you have to buy the validated assessment, you have to subscribe to the My CSF, you have to purchase an assessment report, and HITRUST handles all of these criteria, process criteria. Then here's a quick journey example for an enterprise. So preparation, and, defining your project scope, and my CSF strategy, and HITRUST assessment knowledge transfer to the customer, establish project plan, and then facilitated self-assessment, document control narratives for requirements across each object, identify areas of remediation, and then perform the remediation. And once you have done, ensure all control gaps and deficiencies are remediated. That's when you are ready for a validated assessment. And perform the validated assessment, submit the scores to HITRUST, and then HITRUST will provide you the certification. So there are more details in each case. You know, as RSI, as a HITRUST certified assessor and a HITRUST company, we can help you with all of these stages and how to subscribe, how to perform, how to get ready, and so on. So an assessor can lead you from start to finish. That's a great way to go. So about the certification itself, just a quick criteria, as we saw in the previous slides. If you do a self-assessment, if you do a readiness assessment, you will not get a validated report, or it is not certification. The certifications are only available for a validated assessment report. So which means you have to perform a validated assessment in order to get certified. The certification is valid for 2 years. And what does HITRUST give you? A letter of certification or a letter of validation. And then within the 2 years, there is an interim review that is required to make sure that, yes, the certification is still good. So interim review is what it is. It's not a full validated assessment, but it is, there are certain criteria, certain process where an assessor can say, yes, I have performed the interim review, or HITRUST can say, yes, the company has done an interim review, they're good to go. Let's go back to the slide I wanted to cover a little more. Here. So in the self-assessment, you have common set of controls based on existing standards and regulations, and standard set of questionnaires, tools, and processes for assessing, standard report, compliance scorecard, corrective action plan, and risk factors encompass all sizes and risks of organizations, oversight and governance by HITRUST. So as you can see, self-assessment is kind of limited. That's the word I would like to use. It's limited. Just because you say I have done self-assessment, that does not mean I have done a validated assessment. It's just that I did it ourselves, or an assessor helped without purchasing a validated assessment. So that's not how it is. Self-assessment is limited in value. That's important to remember. In other words, if you tell a regulator or a partner saying, I have done self-assessment, that's just that. It is very standard, and risk factors are not tailored. It is for all sizes and risks of any organization. So it's kind of cookie cutter assessment criteria that you'll be performing, and it's very limited in terms of tailored validated assessment. Whereas validated assessment, it is performed by a HITRUST CSF assessor, which means there is a third-party oversight. And then it is prioritized requirements based on industry output and breach analysis. HITRUST validates the results. In case of self-assessment, HITRUST gives you the report, but they don't really validate the whole thing. And then the results and the cap, risk factors encompasses all sizes and risk of organization, oversight and governance by HITRUST. The key thing here is HITRUST validates the results. That is not occurring in the self-assessment. In the certification case, it is a self-validated assessment, plus, in addition, no gaps with prioritized requirements based on CSF controls. Established industry accepted baseline of security requirements, reduced risk and compliance exposure, increased assurance of data protection with third parties. HITRUST certifies the results and the cap. So here, the key thing is to understand that the first point, no gaps with prioritized requirements based on CSF controls. So it's much more oversight by HITRUST. It's a much more detailed oversight, and it ensures that any gaps that may be left with self-assessment or valid assessment is identified in the certification. So certification is clearly a sign of strength. It is not just a paper letter that you receive from HITRUST. It is a sign of strength in terms of audit. So that's what I would like to emphasize. And at this point, I would like to take questions from you if there are any.
Yeah, Mohan, right before we get to that, if you could go actually to that slide, I just want to let all the attendees know that we'll be emailing you these resources tomorrow. So while I'm going over this, yes, I would really encourage you to fill out any questions you have so that Mohan can get to those. I see that a participant, Robert, just raised your hand. If you want to type out a question, that'd be great. So yeah, just quickly, tomorrow we'll be sending you an email with this presentation deck, along with a request a consultation link and discount offer. So as a thank you for attending today's webinar, we're offering a 10% discount on our HITRUST compliance advisory services through the end of April. So if you're looking to get some help on your HITRUST compliance, you might want to take advantage of that. And then we are also sending out a certificate giving you the one continuing professional education credit for attending today's webinar. You can expect to receive that email sometime in the morning tomorrow from marketing@rsisecurity.com. If you don't get that email tomorrow, please just send an email to marketing@rsisecurity.com and let me know, and I'll send it to you, just because sometimes we have some deliverability issues with the emails. So if you don't get it tomorrow, let us know and I can get you all of those resources. So without further ado, I'll pass it back to you, Mohan.
Thank you, Ariana. So I guess we have a few more minutes. If I'm open to any of your questions at this time, whether it is if you have questions on PCI, if you have questions on HIPAA or HITRUST, you're welcome to ask any of those. It need not be just about HITRUST process or HITRUST assessment. Sure. So here's a question. Can you expand on how the HITRUST audit helps with the PCI assessment? Okay. So when it comes to PCI assessment, HITRUST is a platform, which means I'm going to take you back to how the PCI assessment works. For those who are familiar with it, please bear with me. It's a repeat. For those who are not, here's an introduction. So PCI DSS, depending on the PCI also has levels depending on the volume of credit card transactions and so on, whether you're a service provider or whether you're a merchant and so on. So we, as a QSA, we audit your security posture. We ensure that you have implemented all of the PCI DSS requirements, prescribed requirements, and then there is a prescribed report that is approved and validated by PCI Council, which is called the Report on Compliance. And then the Report on Compliance basically provides a narrative of how you have met PCI compliance. What's your business? What are the controls you have put in place, whether it meets the PCI standards or not, whether there is segregation, segmentation, testing, scanning, and so on. So it basically has a very prescribed 12 different areas of compliance. the compliance requirements. So now after the process, we provide you the report on compliance. Then that report is a template. It's an approved template from PCI Council. No other company generates it. So we provide you, we validate that, and we provide you a report on compliance. And then each report on compliance also comes with attestation of compliance, which every QSA company attests, and also the organization also attests that yes, we it's basically saying what we are saying is true, and this is the truth, and it provides the guarantee that it has gone through the audit. So that's, and then you register, and then you provide that to your partners, and you register with Visa and so on, and you're good to go for a year. So it's an annual requirement. Now, how does HITRUST help? Now to answer your question. So you can use HITRUST platform in order to perform the assessment. That's where the key is. It's just a platform to perform your assessment. It's if you have heard of the GRC tools, HITRUST is also a GRC tool, and the HITRUST process helps you with making sure that your assessment process is solid. That is where the HITRUST comes into picture. At the end of the day, the process is the same. Using the HITRUST platform, a report on compliance can be generated, an attestation of compliance can be generated, and then and signed by the QSA and signed by the organization. So that's all it is. HITRUST is not replacing anything else, any other process that we do. PCI Council is the authority. QSAs are the auditors. Organizations have to prove that the PCI standards are in place. That doesn't change. HITRUST is just a complementary platform to make sure that your assessment process is 100%. And that's where the HITRUST benefits. Sorry about the long answer. Well, if there are no other questions, again, I would like to thank you for joining Ariana and me and RSI in this webinar, and hope it was informative. And feel free to send us an email, ask any questions. We're happy to answer even after the webinar. As Ariana mentioned, this deck will be available to you, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And stay safe out there, and hope everything gets better as the days goes by. Thank you again.